Hey there, in this video I am joined by Harry Turpin, who is a director and actor living in Seattle, Washington. We are going to be talking about musical theater auditions, how to prepare a songbook, how to get through a dance call if you're not a dancer, and other subjects that are related to musical theater auditions. You won't want to miss this after the bump. Hey everybody, so good to see your bright, shiny faces. My name is Doug Fall and this is Augmented Actor. If you would like to augment your acting career with tips, tactics, and tech, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and notification bell. And if you do, I will give you a shiny new penny. What should an actor put in their songbook?
So you should have a nice selection in your songbook, pieces that you've worked on and have figured out what the acting beats are. But you should have a nice selection in your songbook so that way, when they ask for a golden age, you have a golden age. When they ask for a rock song, you have that rock song. Things that are gonna show you off and things that you like singing. That's the most important part. Don't pull a piece just because it's difficult and difficult to play. You're not impressing anybody, honestly, particularly if you don't know how to sing it and it's super difficult for you and you're not having fun singing it. Don't do it, don't do it. We wanna see something that you enjoy singing. So above all the pieces in your book you should have a connection to, you should really enjoy singing. In addition to that, make sure that they're varied in styles.
And when I was younger, tenors were the big thing.
Sure.
Everybody, all these shows, you know, you need to sing a G or an A or whatever, and so I'd always pick songs that I could sing an F or a G or whatever, and I, you know, sometimes struggle at that, whereas I'm really good in a baritone level. So for somebody like me who is just sort of a high baritone or a natural baritone, should you try to show them your upper range so that you can get those roles, or should you just go with what you think is powerful? I think
it's a kind of a yes and situation to both, really. I mean, I wish I had a more concrete answer for you, but I do believe that if you're specifically auditioning for, like, let's say a rock show, and they need to know that you have some of those higher notes, even though you may not be screaming the high B's and the A's and things like that, sustaining on an F or a G is important in situations like that. So you want to pick a piece that's going to be able to show that you have that range and use that for the audition. But again, you don't want to go in and struggle, right? You don't want to go in and specifically pick something that might be slightly out of your range because they're going to be like, oh, he's pitchy, he can't do it. I would rather hear low, and then if we're considering you for something that sings higher, we will vocalize you in the room. I know that I work with my music directors all the time. We're like, huh, he's interesting. I wonder if he could work in this. Let's check his range, and we'll do that.
Yeah, and I think what I discovered is that sometimes it's better to pick a song that goes up at some point in the middle, like has a phrase that goes up and doesn't stay on that, doesn't build up to that last final note.
Right.
Those last final notes that are the ones you crack on.
Yes, the killer notes for sure at the very end of the piece. I think that's a great suggestion. If you can find something that has a nice build in it, one, is just going to help from a storytelling aspect too, because you have to remember you're still acting through the whole thing, right? But it's that nice build allows you to come up and then be able to come back down again, and it's going to help show your different levels. But if you're building belt, that's the level you get. You just get sort of one level all the way through. We're fortunate enough out here that we usually ask for 32 bars or a verse and a chorus out there, but there are some situations where that's not the case. I remember I sat in on an audition in New York, and they had so many people there that they said, give me your last 4 bars, your best 4 bars of your song. So
it's one note.
And literally, it was one note. This is the wicked call. And so all of these women, there were like 500 women there that day, one after another, just went in and went, bah! And like belted their faces off and left. And you're like, how does that even show you anything at all? But we're fortunate that we get the opportunity to do a verse and a chorus. We should utilize that to our best advantage and build it, and to your point, having that sort of high peak that will allow you to come back down, so that way you're not putting all your eggs into one basket. Because even if you crack on that high note in the middle, you still are acting the piece. And we can go, okay, they just had a bad day, but gosh, they can really pull me in with that story.
I am a firm believer, and when you're auditioning, that you should, you know, try never to stop, never to apologize, you know, work on those little details. But somebody just recently asked a question, what if your accompanist just totally screws your song up.
Yeah.
What do you do then?
So I think that it really depends on when it's going to happen. I mean, if you can tell within the first few bars, I think it's perfectly within your purview to stop once. It really depends on the situation you're in. If you're in like a Broadway house, maybe not, right? But if you're here in Seattle and on the local level, I think it's absolutely okay to be able to say, I'm sorry, I think we may have miscommunicated. I just want to clarify something with you. Step over, talk with your accompanist. They're going to appreciate it because sometimes, and I asked a couple of my musician friends because this same question came up for me too, and they were like, sometimes we start in the wrong key, sometimes we didn't understand your tempo, those things we want to help you, but at the end of the day, you have to know your material because the accompanist is looking at 50, 60, 70 pieces of music a day. And sight reading is a very, very difficult and a specialized skill to be able to sit there and go, okay, all of these different styles, all of these different composers, I have to now play for people. It is perfectly okay to have that conversation. They are there to support you and they want to help you, but you have to know your material so that way, if it does go on and you choose not to stop, you can still power through.
What about monologues? Would you stop at a monologue?
You know, yes, I think it's okay to stop if you just completely get tracked, but make sure that you have a clear starting point where you're going to go back. Don't start the whole monologue, particularly if you get to the very end of the monologue and you're like, oh, I've got it up. At that point, I think if you just soldier through and find a way to wrap it up. But if you're in the first couple moments and your nerves just kind of get the best of you, I think it's okay to be able to say, I'm sorry, I'd like to take that again. Don't give any more than that. Just be like, I'd like to take that again. Take a nice deep breath, clear yourself, center yourself, and then go. I personally am a little bit more forgiving in the room about that. It's great if it doesn't happen, right? But it's going to happen, and people are going to be nervous, and things are just going to happen. I know I've gone up on things before. I can tell you a quick story about that.
Sure.
I was auditioning for a production of Peter Pan, anyway, and I went and I took the Money song from Cabaret, which has that, if you happen to be rich and you feel like in the middle of the song. And I'm like 18 years old, and this is like one of my first big auditions. And I walk in and I get to that part, and the music is playing, and I go, if you happen to be, and I just froze. Like I couldn't remember any of the words. And they're like, okay, just take it again. Like they stopped me and they're like, okay, it's okay, just take it again. So I go back and I do it again, and again I freeze. I go, if you happen to, and they're like, okay, if you freeze again, just make up sounds, make up words, just keep going. And I was like, okay. So they start the music again, and sure enough, I freeze, but I kept going. I just couldn't remember the words, and I was like, if you happen to be ba da 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 ba da 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 da. So I did the entire bridge in ba da 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 da, and to the very end, I went 14 karat yacht, huh? Like that. And for whatever reason, they called me back, but they should not have. It's just going to happen. Sometimes it's going to happen, and hopefully the room is safe and inviting enough that that they will be willing to let a mistake like that happen.
Yeah.
And I also think that goes to say something in terms of remembering that while they are auditing you, you are also auditing them. So if they're unforgiving and relentless in the room,
right,
maybe that's not a company you want to work for.
Sure.
Just something to think about.
And I look at it as like, if you are putting on a performance, think cabaret performances. I've seen many shows where it's like the singer gets off on the wrong something and they'll say, nope, let's start again, or whatever. And I feel like if you could avoid saying I'm sorry, and also avoid asking permission, and just say, oh nope, that didn't work, let's start that again. Like, take it from the blood, and just take command of your own performance. I think that's a way to recover from something like that. But the rule of thumb would be when you go back into it, get it right the second time.
Absolutely, and you only get one.
Yeah.
Like, don't stop 4 or 5 times.
Right.
Be like, I'm sorry, that was wrong. I'm sorry, whatever it was. No, you get one. You get one of those, and probably not for both your song and your monologue. I mean, I'm not saying do it at all, but if you were to do it, make sure that it is just only for one of the pieces.
You worked as a choreographer.
Yes.
Tell us how somebody can better their chances of getting cast in a dance call.
That's a great question. Well, classes, first and foremost, do your work, hone your craft, do whatever you can. I get it, not everybody can afford dance classes, and that can be hard. How do you improve your chance in the dance call? I want to see that you are having a good time. I want to see that you are still telling me a story. Again, it goes back to story. Dance is just another form of storytelling, right? The steps are important, and we can work on that, but what I'm looking for is how quickly can you pick things up? Okay, so maybe you're not the fastest, but eventually you do get it. Are you having fun? Like, can you sell me this dance even if you're stepping on your left when you should be on your right? All those different things. And really the next piece is how difficult you are when giving direction in the room. if you don't, like if you're having a great time, if you can tell me a story and you're easy to work with, then I will call you back for the next thing, honestly. But if you're difficult to work with, if you are just look miserable, it comes down to how hard do I want to work as a choreographer and to move them to the next step. But classes really, I mean, you just have to have the foundation, know the techniques that are usually going to be used in a call, the basic steps, so that way, and familiarize yourself with the terminology, honestly. If somebody says, I need you to do a grapevine, and you're like, I don't know what that means. Does that mean we're drinking wine, or what is that? No, know what that grapevine step is, even if you don't necessarily know how to execute it exactly, know what it is so that way you're on the right path. Just familiarizing yourself with the terms and practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, and stamina too. That's why you take classes.
Yeah.
And I know I go to dance calls and I can get through them and be fine and even sell a thing, but then I'm like winded and sweaty and I look a mess, you know.
Right. Yeah, no, it's supposed to look easy. The audience will be like, oh my gosh, that was the easiest thing. And if we're all hot messes after the dance call, they're like, no, that's good. But you bring up a great point. Stamina is a huge part of it, and people forget that the dance call is really just focusing on the dance, but you have to remember you're doing this at the same time. You're acting and singing and dancing all at the same time in those musicals. It's not just dancing. So building up that stamina and putting in the work outside really makes a difference.
How quickly do you sum up an actor when you're at an audition? Whether it's their song or the monologue or they're reading a script, you look on American Idol and they give them like 10 seconds tops, but can you determine in 10 seconds what an actor is like? Do you give them the full piece to develop it? What advice would you give somebody?
You're asking for all the secrets. I want the person in the room to succeed. I'm rooting for them. Every single person that walks through that door, I'm rooting for them, because the best problem in the world to have is 55 actors that I have to choose from for 7 parts. That is a great problem to have. So I'm gonna try to give them as much of my focus as I possibly can, but it becomes fairly obvious probably about 20-25 seconds in if they've done their work, if they have connected to the material in some way and are able to bring something forth. But also, if it marries with the picture that I'm looking for in my head for that particular character. I recently did a set of auditions, and I knew exactly what I was looking for this one character. And auditioner after auditioner, they were all great. They all brought really interesting things, but it just wasn't what I was looking for. And one guy came in, and without having to give him any sort of direction, he had every sort of beat, every sort of nuance that I was looking for, and really captured the character that as I saw it in my head. He was able to walk away with that part. The other folks, I could tell within the first about 20-30 seconds that they just weren't gonna be able to give it. And then giving them the benefit of the doubt, I would provide some coaching and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Give them a second chance. They weren't able to do it in that instance. And usually it's about 20-30 seconds that you can find if they're able to deliver or not.
You went on a national tour.
I did.
What is that experience like?
Oh goodness, I'm sure it's different for everybody. My experience was a lot of fun. I felt like I got to audition the cities of America and get paid while doing it. It was pretty great. But the performance part of it, I was on the tour for 2 years, and that's a lot of Annie. That's a lot of The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow. It really tests you as an actor to be able to continue to keep things fresh day after day after day, particularly if you're doing 8 shows a week for 2 years in a row. You have to go out there and hit the marks and things, but still be able to be in the moment and not anticipate what's going to come up, so that way you don't get jaded and or blasé about the performance work that you're doing. I really enjoyed it. I love the aspect. I love being in a different city. I loved watching the reactions of just these audiences who fall in love with the show, which is super easy to fall in love with. The hardest part, I think, is not having a home base. You do live out of your suitcase. At least for me, it was a little challenging just to live out of a suitcase and be like, okay, we're moving on to the next thing. But it's also part of the excitement too. And you get to meet some really great people and create lifelong friendships out of it, because it really is this microcosm. I mean, you are living with these people, you're working with these people, you're eating with these people, traveling with these people, you see these people all the time. You quickly become a family, and along with the family comes all the things that a family does. I mean, you love each other, you hate each other, you fight with each other, you make up, all of those things. It feels like a lifetime, when really it was only 2 years of my life. It's kind of crazy, and like in a good way though. It was just, and I think the traveling, being in a different city with these people over and over over and over again really brings out that sort of feeling. You'd be like, oh my gosh, remember when we did the thing? And you're like, wait, that was just like 2 months ago. But it feels like 3 years ago.
Did you ever feel like you were missing out on opportunities at home or to do something else?
I don't think I did. No, I know that there were some people who were always looking for the next opportunity. I was grateful just to be in the gig. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed my track. I probably could have done it for another 3 years or so. I just really enjoyed it. I didn't ever feel like I was missing out, but I did keep my eye out for another opportunity every once in a while, you know. But it would have to be really good for me to have left the tour. If the Broadway came a calling, then I'd be like, yes, I'll be there. But you know, I couldn't really look the gift horse in the mouth. It was such a great opportunity, making really good money, being able to do something I love, and then having your day free to go and explore. It's kind of the ideal situation.
Yeah. You were union. You joined the union when you went on the tour,
Yes.
Is that right? You're not union now.
That is correct.
What led to your decision to leave the union or to be with it for how long did you stay with it, and what made you decide to leave it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I did join the union once I went out on tour. I had been an equity or EMC candidate, equity membership candidate for a while, and I had the points. I never made the decision to jump. And once the tour came along, they said, you have to go equity in order to do the tour. Okay, fine. So I signed all the paperwork and sent in the dues and everything like that. And I stayed equity, of course, through the length of the tour, and then 3 to 4 years after. And I did a couple projects in between there. When I moved back to Seattle, I had made the decision to move back to Seattle from New York. I went in for a couple auditions as an equity member, and what I found was that I didn't have the same drive, I guess, as I did before in terms of performance. I had started making the transition once I moved back into choreographing and directing and things like that. And so I found that I wasn't really auditioning. I didn't really need to have my union card. And it was in the houses that were going to be really, really competitive. And because I had sort of changed my focus, it didn't make any sense for me to stay union at that point. And part of that was going along with what I mentioned earlier is I wanted to do projects that I just wanted to do. I didn't necessarily want to be out there hustling and having to worry on it for my health insurance, et cetera, and things like that. So I made a very conscious decision to get a day job and be able to do the things that I want to do in the evening to fill my soul, if that gets a little woo-woo and out there. But really that was a very conscious decision to make that choice. And I said, at some point, maybe I will audition for Village and Fifth again. I don't know. That may come along. But if it does, I can get my card again. You know, I can work towards that if that's really something that's important to me. It just wasn't important to me anymore. And the work that I wanted to do, the roles that I wanted to do, I knew I was never going to get the opportunity in those particular houses to do. And if I'm doing it for myself and I'm learning for myself, it just made no sense to keep the card. So I made the decision to give it up.
Cool. Yeah, I find a lot of actors make that decision, and it's usually based on the market that they're in. If there's just not enough work, then it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, it definitely played a huge part of it. I mean, we have a lot of really talented union members here in Seattle, and they will fly people in too if they don't have the people that they want. I'm not saying that I am not talented. I'm just saying that it's a much more competitive market, and there's not a lot of work to sustain that. You really have to just be going after it hardcore, and that's just not something that I wanted to do.
If you enjoyed this video, you might want to check this playlist out. We have more videos from this interview with Harry Turpin, and you will get more valuable advice there. Hope to see you next time.